on Capitol Hill with one senator who's calling for a hearing into the trading laws. Peter?
Mark, thanks very much. I'm joined by Senator Bob Corker, the Republican from Tennessee, member of the Senate Banking Committee. Thank you for the time. You've called for a hearing into the J.P. Morgan situation. First of all, let me ask you, what does it tell you, as a member of the Banking Committee, that you have a bank supposedly as well managed as J.P. Morgan get into this kind of trouble? What does that tell you about the state of the banking sector right now?
Well, I think anytime look, human beings make mistakes and these kind of things happen in business, and you know it is less than 2 months worth of earnings for the institution. But I think what it
tell you about the state of the banking sector right now.
Well, I think anytime look, human beings make mistakes and these kind of things happen in business, and you know it is less than 2 months worth of earnings for the institution. But I think what you've heard numbers of people saying that if Volcker were implemented at this point, this couldn't happen. Well, we've been talking to the OCC examiner in charge of J.P. Morgan over the weekend. They said that's just absolutely not true. We've heard other people say, well, if we still had Glass-Steagall, this trade couldn't have happened. Well, that's just, according to the OCC, absolutely not true. This all took place on the banking side of the entity. So I think, look, there's going to be an outcome here. And what I mean by this is when you have a high-profile, very respected person like Jamie Dimon, this kind of thing, I think what this points to is that, you know, even in well-run institutions, things like this can happen.
Thought out there that actually this incident could make things a little clearer for regulators. They have to draw up the final rule here for the Volcker rule. Isn't this can be pretty obvious to regulators that they look at what happened at J.P. Morgan and say, whatever we write here, this can't be allowed to happen?
Well, I don't know. I mean, let me pull out. It's interesting. What the law says is risk mitigating hedging activities in connection with and related to individual or aggregate positions. And it talks about specific risk related to those. So I don't think it's clear. And all I want to do is make sure that the outcome here is good policy. And you're exactly right. What's happened is this incident has occurred right in the middle of a lot of things happening in Washington. While, you know, Congress has punted to the regulators on this, regulators are, you know, trying to decide how to implement these rules, and I think this is going to have an impact, and certainly the response of policymakers like myself and others will have an impact on their decisions.
Let me ask you about Jamie Dimon. You say you've been talking with the bank. Obviously, someone who's talks to members of the Banking Committee all the time. There is one question that's been raised by Elizabeth Warren and others. Should he continue to serve as the chairman of the New York Federal Reserve Bank Board, given that J.P. Morgan's arguably being investigated by the Fed right now?
Well, look, I mean, institutions like this are constantly, you know, under the regulation of the Fed, the OCC, the SEC, and others. I can't leap to that kind of conclusion. I mean, I look at where J.P. Morgan was when the crisis began. I look at the experiences of Jamie Dimon as a CEO. That's just a place I can't leap to. I think the person who's thrown this out is running for the Senate in Massachusetts, and a lot of people say things in Senate races and presidential races that are meant to draw attention or draw distinction or draw differences. But, you know, I think it's way, 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 way early to be jumping to that kind of conclusion.
You haven't heard back officially yet from Chairman Johnson as to whether or not you will have a hearing. Do you expect